Welcome to VFILES.DATA.
CRUSTPUNK, or simply Crust, is a form of music influenced by hardcore punk and extreme metal. The style, which evolved in the mid-1980s in England, often has songs with dark and pessimistic lyrics focused on the writer's perceived issues with society. The term Crust was coined by the band HELLBASTARD on their 1986 Ripper Crust demo. It seems as though the etymology of CRUSTPUNK has little to do with the word's traditional reference point, the outer layer of carbohydrate-based bread products. While the subculture CRUSTPUNK is primarily derived from the musical genre that bears the same name, the group is known publicly for their clothing, which is characterized by a quote, DIY, or do-it-yourself type ethos. Common motifs that characterize CRUSTPUNK clothing include black garments, jackets and denim covered in patches, holes and tears. Patches are primarily utilized to demonstrate loyalty to a band that produces CRUSTPUNK music. However, they are not applied in order to mend holes in the garment, as those remain visible. Apparently this is related to the CRUSTPUNK's attempts to appear anti-capitalist, or against the mainstream, as this demonstrates their asset-poor lifestyle. Another prominent aspect of CRUSTPUNK, or crusty culture, is the hairstyle dreadlocks. While dreadlocks are usually worn by people of color and are a traditional element of both Rastafarian and African American culture, the white, affluent, often Christian CRUSTPUNK believes dreadlocks to have cultural cash within their subculture is another indication that they eschew the cultural norm of personal hygiene and allow their hair to become knotted into dreads on their own. Here, they appropriate other cultures' meaningful signifiers and utilize them to their own means, to construe their image-motivated societal critique. CRUSTPUNKs similarly wear army surplus clothing, often in service of demonstrating their aesthetic preferences. Another group of people often seen on the street, destitute, are millions of veterans left injured, mentally scarred, and helpless after participating in wars fought by the United States. They too often seen wearing army surplus clothing and living on the street. CRUSTPUNKs emulate their fashion choices to depict themselves as similarly helpless and noble. Often, however, the CRUSTPUNK is college-educated and comes from a wealthy background. Another popular accessory of the CRUSTPUNK is a canine companion, often a golden retriever or some other form of large dog which necessitates a large amount of food and maintenance. The intentional destitution of the CRUSTPUNK and the desire to care for another animal appears incongruous and likely irresponsible. However, the bandana tied around the neck of the dog is often what one may refer to as, quote, cute. It appears as though the motivation for the shabby appearance of the CRUSTPUNK, an appearance characterized by the aforementioned ripped and torn garments in which they dress, is the CRUSTPUNK's anti-capitalist agenda. The CRUSTPUNK chooses not to purchase or even rummage for new clothing when their old ones become unwearable. Through this action, which they themselves would characterize as radical, they actively display their distaste for the exchange of capital that is typical of the neoliberal democratic experiment that is the United States of America. The CRUSTPUNK flips the notion of capitalism on its head. They freely accept money from their parents that exchange labor for capital, as well as money from passers-by on the street that similarly exchange their labor for capital. However, the CRUSTPUNK, often an able-bodied member of society, occasionally a well-educated individual, refuses to transfer their potential labor force power into currency. This, according to the CRUSTPUNK, is a similarly anti-establishmentarian act, as well as a radical one. A number of CRUSTPUNKs have found life on land masses as too conducive to inclusion within capitalist society, and have chosen to seastead, the practice of creating permanent residences at sea. According to Wired magazine, a street artist named Swoon defined these makeshift rafts as, quote, part art project, part utopian experiment, and that they sought inspiration from their, quote, nomadic journey, end quote. seemingly traveling on a barge crafted from garbage is integral to the creative process of a crust punk, although what was created appears unknown. Crust punks are frequently depicted as the villains in movies. In the film Battlefield Earth, screen actor John Travolta, best known for playing a high school bad boy in the film Grease, is depicted as Terrell, the leader of a group of aliens that takes over the Earth. The film is based on a science fiction novel written by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, a religion that many celebrities, Travolta included, are engaged in. Interestingly, the villain in the film is depicted as a crust punk. This may be related to the frequency with which loved ones of wealthy celebrities turn to the subgenre. Actress Jennifer Aniston of the hit 1990s sitcom Friends is plagued by this phenomenon. Her half-brother Alex John Aniston is a crust punk replete with signifiers of the culture, odd boots, tattoos, dreadlocks, and wealthy relatives. In December 2015, Aniston had a child with his girlfriend Adrienne. The child is named Riot, which has an unknown meaning. It is unclear as to what the addition of a child means for Mr. Aniston. As his lifestyle relies on the support of parental figures, it is hard to know who Riot will ask for money. When asked to describe the aesthetic of crust punk, film actor Julian Lego Gillespie of Deviated Instinct described it as a, quote, punky biker look, akin to Mad Max 2, which is the crustiest film ever made. Mad Max 2 is a post-apocalyptic science fiction film, in which the characters are forced to live in a dystopia. Seemingly crust punks aspire to appear as though they live in a dystopian society with no future. Perhaps crust punks are quite perceptive. Data transmission complete.